This is the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 17th chapter. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God, except this foreigner?" Then he said to them, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." And this is the gospel of the Lord. In preparation for my sermon this week, I pulled out my Bible and I started to read this text from Luke. And as I was reading, I read this: "As he entered a village, 10 leopards approached him." So then I thought, what in the world is wrong with my Bible? This was a newer Bible that I was using, and I was already drafting the email in my head to the publisher to tell them that their Bible says leopards rather than lepers. And I read it again. Sure enough, it said 10 leopards approached him. And then I did this. And guess what? It didn't say leopards. It said lepers. It is no fun getting older and your eyes start to do funny things. So I can assure you, it does not say leopards. It says lepers, 10 lepers. And a leper is one who suffers from the disease of leprosy. And leprosy was a very, very horrible skin condition. It still is a horrible skin condition, but it was very common back in the ancient world. And it was actually a skin infection, a kind of a long-term skin infection. And back in the ancient world, they did not have a great treatment for it. But nowadays, they do. You can be treated for leprosy, and people still get leprosy. And I read somewhere that in the United States, there are still 200 cases of leprosy every year. I was really surprised by that, but we can treat it with antibiotics and that sort of thing. But the Bible talks about leprosy in a lot of different places. And one of the places where it talks about leprosy and how to treat one with leprosy and how to treat yourself for leprosy is in the book of Leviticus. And it says this: "If you ever have leprosy, you must tear your clothes, leave your hair uncombed, cover the lower part of your face, and go around shouting, 'I'm unclean! I'm unclean! I'm unclean!' As long as you have this disease, you are unclean," it says, "and must live alone outside of the camp." And so that's what we have in our gospel story for today. We have this group of lepers that are banded together. And it didn't matter if you were all a part of the same ethnic group. There was even a Samaritan in this group as well, who would have been an enemy of the Jewish people of that day. And he's the one that turns around, stops, and says, "Thank you," this enemy of the Jewish people, this Samaritan. So this group of people were banded together. They were living together because they all had leprosy. And then they see Jesus coming through. And I'm sure they have heard of Jesus at this point, and they know that Jesus is a healer. And perhaps Jesus could heal them of their leprosy. So here comes Jesus, this man that they have heard about, approaching this group of lepers, not leopards, but lepers. As he approaches, they shout to him, and they're keeping their distance, because remember, they can't get close. That was the ancient Jewish law. So they shout to him, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Have mercy on us." And then Jesus saw them and then says to them this: "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And the priests in the ancient world were, of course, the religious leaders, but they were also the gatekeepers of health and safety of the community. If you were declared clean by a priest, that meant that you could re-enter your life and be reunited with friends and family and work and home and all of your loved ones. So as these lepers are going to show themselves to the priests, one of them sees that he has been cured of leprosy and turns and gives thanks to Jesus for what he had done. All were healed, but only one of them stops, turns around, and gives thanks to Jesus, thanks him for healing him, and praises him. So the great reformer Martin Luther once was asked to describe the true nature of worship. And he said very simply, the 10th leper turned back. Out of all the places of the Bible, Martin Luther thought about this very Bible story to talk about the true nature of worship. Then one of the lepers, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He knelt down at Jesus' feet and thanked him. That is what true worship is. Stopping to notice where God has been in your life and simply saying thank you, expressing your gratitude. And that's the great lesson that we learn from that 10th leper who stopped, turned back, and thanked Jesus for healing him. Saying thank you, expressing your gratitude, that's something that I sometimes don't do a very good job of. I'd put myself with those other 9 lepers who walked away without saying thank you. This past week, I was reminded of the great power of turning back and saying thank you. Several weeks ago, the elementary school just down the street used our building for a kindness retreat. So we had a bunch of young kids in the building here. And this past week, one of those kids stopped, turned back, and wrote us the most beautiful thank you note you have ever seen, thanking us for allowing them to use our building. And it was just an awesome letter, so I want to read it to you now. This is an example of someone stopping, turning around, and saying thank you, kind of like that 10th leper did in our gospel story. This is what she writes. These are her words. Dear Christ the King, thank you for letting us use your space. It was good for us to learn / remember how important kindness is, so you know that it is worth it. I'm not certain where we could have gone to learn about kindness without you. I'm happy that you decided we were important enough to let us use your church, even if you had Mass that day. I think she must have been Catholic. But that's okay. That's okay. I want to go on record to say that all people are welcome here at Christ the King. All of us are grateful for everything, she writes. It was fun when we sat with our group and made a play about kindness. It was funny and cool when we practiced our play. Everyone wanted to be the victim of the bully. I liked it when we played the sea game with pirates on port and sharks on starboard. Sounds like quite a game. I'm glad you let that happen. And I love this part. I learned that kindness comes back to you like a boomerang. I learned that kindness comes back to you like a boomerang. I learned that everyone can help one another. I also learned that our school can be cleaned of rudeness. I learned that my friends and I will change the future. Isn't that wonderful? I learned that my friends and I will change the future. Thank you again for everything. And she signs her name. What a wonderful thank you note and a great example of stopping, turning back, and giving thanks. And I was absolutely humbled by this letter. I think I might frame it and put it on my wall. You know, so often I'm like those other 9 lepers who walked away without saying thanks. And it wasn't that they were ungrateful, but perhaps they had too much on their plate to stop and turn around and say thank you. They still had a long road ahead of them, to be sure. They may have been healed, but there was still a lot to do now that they were healed. They had to get approval from the priests to re-enter their community. They had to reconnect with their families. Now that they were healed, they had to find jobs and start and start making money again. There was a lot to do. And life can be really hectic. I can relate to that. Sometimes we forget to stop and say thanks. So between this gospel lesson, which I first said leopards, and this letter, I got the message pretty clearly. Stop. Just stop. Turn back and say thanks. And it is not that I am not grateful for the things in my life, but I sometimes find that I reserve my gratitude when things are going just perfectly. Everything is going really well in life. Then I have time to be grateful. But I think when things aren't going well, that's when we especially need to work on this whole notion of gratitude and being thankful and paying attention, stopping and paying attention to all the things that God has given us in our life. So that's what I did this week. Life, no doubt about it, has been hectic during this time of transition here at Christ the King. But I was inspired by this young elementary school child and also our gospel lesson. And I worked to stop, to turn around and give thanks for the people and the things in my life. So here's my list. And this is not all-inclusive. This is an abridged version of my list. So the first thing I am grateful for on my list is all of you. I hope you know this, but this is a wonderful congregation. And in my short 2+ years here, we've been through a lot together. And please know, I give thanks for all of you each and every day to this amazing God that we have. I give thanks for all of the ways that I see God working through each and every one of you. And in the last few years, we've gone through some challenges. We've lost some really wonderful people in our congregation and all sorts of challenges. But it's amazing to see how our congregation comes together. Just yesterday, I got news that Paul Morlock, Della Morlock's son, passed away. And Della, I just want to say we love you dearly, and we give thanks for you. And I give thanks for the ways that I've seen just today of people surrounding you and loving you. We give thanks for all of the ways that you care for each other in this congregation. Life can be really hard sometimes, and it's amazing to see how you come together to love and care for one another. Della, please know we love you and we're praying for you, and let us know if there's absolutely anything we can do during this difficult time. I'm grateful for so many things here. I'm grateful for the group of people that come and tape our newsletters together. They came just a week ago, and I sat and laughed with them for over a half hour. I mean, I was belly laughing with this group of people. They were so much fun. It was something that I needed in that moment. If I had been drinking milk at that moment, the milk would have been coming out of my nose. I was laughing so incredibly hard. I'm grateful for all of those people that come to our Wednesday night worship service. I'm grateful that we have such wonderful food. We had over 100 people come to our Italian night this past Wednesday, which was really, really cool. We even had 7 students from MSUM come and share in a meal with us. I am grateful for our amazing staff and for our volunteers. We have such an incredible staff, and I have been having so much fun with them. We have a lot of fun at our staff meetings. We laugh for a good chunk of them, but I can assure you that in the midst of our laughter and having fun, we are getting things done, so do not be concerned. We just happen to be having a lot of fun while we are getting those things done. And grateful for our volunteers as well. I'm grateful for the leaders in our church and how each person is so dedicated to making the ministry go. I am grateful for my weekly pick-me-up with Janitors for Jesus, another wonderful group. The women are always in the kitchen and the guys are always in the crosswalk area, crossroads area. And I get to swap bar recipes with the ladies in the kitchen. This week we had a 7-layer bar that I am extremely grateful for. It was heavenly and divine. And get to talk about sports and cars and all sorts of different things with the guys. But there's a lot of wisdom in that group, and I look up to each and every one of those people and give thanks for that wisdom and for learning about the history here at Christ the King, and to pick up and glean information that we can use as we continue to move forward and continue to work on where God is calling us into the future. They're a fun group. I am grateful for the run of baptisms we've been having here at Christ the King. We have another one at the second service. Coming up in a few weeks, I get to do 3 baptisms in one service, which I'm really looking forward to. So I give thanks for so many different things here at Christ the King. Thank you for making this a wonderful community. This community isn't about me, it isn't about staff, it's about all of us. Each and every one of us make up this wonderful community of the Lutheran Church of Christ the King. And for that, I give thanks for in your work of proclaiming the gospel and reaching out with the good news to a world that needs to hear that good news. So thank you. I'm also thankful for my family, for my wife, for my son who teaches me things each and every day. I'm thankful for our country, our state, and our world. There's so much to be grateful for. And I'm thankful for the great laughter that I had at myself as I was reading this text and read leopards instead of lepers. But you see, sometimes we don't always see things clearly in life. And sometimes it may take a young child or the gospel to help us to see life more clearly. It's so easy to be like those 9 lepers who simply walked away. And this can be especially true when going through times of transition or challenges. And we're going through change and transition right now here at Christ the King as we continue to figure out where God is calling us next. And as we continue to work on figuring out where God is calling us in this next chapter, and I am very excited to work and discover where God is calling us. There are wonderful things in store for this congregation. So in the midst of all of that, let's stop, turn around, and give thanks. Our text calls all of us to turn around and to express our gratitude. And when you throw out gratitude to those around you, it comes back at you like a boomerang. I think I've heard that somewhere. So take a moment, look at your life, look at this church. What are you thankful for? So in the next few weeks, we'll take time to focus on our stewardship. We'll be having our stewardship program, which will focus on gratitude and thankfulness. That will be our stewardship theme. And during that time, we'll take some opportunities to look back and be grateful for all of the wonderful things going on here at Christ the King. In fact, on the pledge cards, the first thing we have on there is, what are you grateful for here at Christ the King? Every single thing that takes place here at Christ the King and the building itself is completely funded by our financial support. And sharing some of your resources provides a training zone for all of us to practice our faith. Each person's gifts matter, and we thank you. Thank you for sharing your gifts here. It is our mission to share the blessings we receive with the greater community in the world and to preach the good news of the gospel. We know that you could spend your money and share your talents elsewhere, and we are thankful that you share some of those resources with us here in this wonderful congregation. True worship is how the 10th leper turned back. And we give thanks to God for teaching us through elementary school students, lepers, and hey, even leopards. Amen.